All right, what's going on, everybody? I hope you guys are holding up okay. I know it's a tense time. I know there's an election happening right now, and
What?
we're keeping an eye on it. Anything could happen any moment here, so we're keeping an eye on it. Also, you guys can let us know too if anything happens. We are the Tennessee Holler, tnholler.com. You know that. Follow all these hollers all throughout the state. And today is the Holler Hour. So if you guys have anything to holler about, message us in our messages and we will send you the link so you can jump in and holler at us too. We're going to be joined today by two awesome people. Senator Yarbro and Lamar, Representative Lamar, are going to come on to talk to us a bit about what's going on with the Tennessee elections and also help us process what's going on at a national level. Nationally, this has been wild, but it seems like we're on the brink of some good news, Cassie.
Yeah, looks like it. I know that I'm not alone, and just refreshing my feed just to see how close Nevada is to actually finishing its count. And there's some trends in Georgia that I think hopefully will be good signs. And honestly, at this point, I'm most nervous about the runoff elections in Georgia for the Senate, because we desperately need a Senate majority, to get some of this stuff that needs to get done.
It seems like that's what's coming, but I think let's focus on this first. Let's get this out of the way. This is a guy in Nevada. This is John Ralston, who's at the Nevada Independent. He says he sees no path left for Trump, and that's a guy who knows. Nobody has called it yet, though. I think Fox is going to be hesitant to call it because they already called Arizona, and if they call Nevada, that means they have to call the election, so they're probably going to be slow to do that. In the meantime, Trump is in full-on meltdown mode, sending out emails, basically calling Fox Democrat controlled. He's got this guy, Mark Levin, who's a right-wing guy, saying to the legislatures, you have the final say over the choosing of electors, not any board of elections, basically telling them to ignore the people. And then you see Donald Trump Jr. there retweeted it. So that is starting to become their message, that they should ignore what the people are saying and voting for and just go ahead and have the state legislatures steal this. But here's a guy named Matt Kennerly saying they don't have the power to do that, that legislatures already decided to choose by the popular vote, and that they would have had to put that in place by November 3rd. Anyway, it seems like we're headed towards some sloppiness in the courts, which is why we really need this hopefully to get settled, not in the courts. We need this to be a big win for Biden so that when it gets to the courts are less inclined to overturn things and more inclined to leave things alone. So I think, who is in front when it goes into the courts is really a big deal. We also have people in Tennessee that are sort of contributing to the nonsense. Senator Brian Kelsey, he posted basically implying that it was being stolen. He's a senator in Memphis. Then there was also Faison was doing that. Yeah. And Representative Tim Burchett. This is Faison saying he's suing to stop the vote count so an objective viewer can make sure ballots are legitimate. Essentially, trying to imply that there's no objective observers, but there are objective observers in the room. That's complete and total bullshit.
And they have people from both parties in every single place that these are being counted.
Exactly right. And then Tim Burchett said the same thing. Why would you not want the public to watch them count votes? They have observers in there. They're like credentialed objective observers. They all have it. And these guys know damn well that that's the case.
Yeah.
So, nobody should be listening to these people. They're all just trying to, basically turn over the table, upset the board before the game is over because they know they're about to lose. My little brother used to do that when he played video games. He used to turn off the game, and that's essentially what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn off the game. Dad, you're going to have to do better than Tim Burchett if you want me to flash your comment on the screen. I'm sorry. Let's play a video though real quick. There's a couple things that I wanted to show people. This was really funny. This was the recount, had a video of the chants that are going on.
Oh, yes.
Stop the vote and count the vote. So that's a side-by-side. In Arizona, they're saying count the vote.
Yeah.
And in Michigan, they're saying stop the vote.
I reposted this on my Instagram story with
they're
both posted with clown music. You just have to have like clown music underneath it.
Yeah, it needs to have like the Curb Your Enthusiasm music or something like that. It's just so absurd. what these people are doing. There's no consistency. There's no ideology other than what's convenient for Trump. That is all they care about. And, what they're really doing is taking a sledgehammer to the foundation of our democracy by filling people's heads with these ideas and, calling it all into question this way. It's really an ugly, ugly thing. And, people need to call them out. Another thing that I wanted to show here, this is in Philadelphia. This is the other side of that coin. This is what Philadelphians are doing to cheer on, I guess, the count. A full-on street party.
That's amazing.
With count every vote. I mean, personally, I would much rather side with that team.
I know, right? If it was just like pure aesthetics and like having a good time, 100%. And I mean, that's what you do anyway. It's like they're on the right side of history. They're arguing for the right things. Like, so yeah, I mean, naturally that's how it's going to be. I think that with what the Trumpers are doing both in Arizona and Michigan, it's like, and with Trump himself and Don Jr. and all these, people getting increasingly insane because they're getting increasingly desperate. So as what you were saying with your brother, of course their attacks are going to become even more immature as they go along.
I mean, they're fully desperate. They're on the ropes. They know it, and so they're trying anything. In Nevada, I'm 40 years old. I still don't know how to say it. They went out and basically brought this like woman who said that she went to go vote and they already had her vote counted and that someone had voted for her, but then they found out that she actually did vote. I mean, it's complete bullshit what they're doing. They're trotting out these anecdotal things it's theater. But then Jacob Soboroff was on MSNBC Live, and this guy Richard Grinnell, who's a Trumper, and Matt Schlapp, who had just had this press conference. They wouldn't even give their names at the press conference. Soboroff knew who they were. He chased them down and he said, "Where's the evidence?"
We're live on MSNBC right now. Can you talk about the evidence? You're claiming thousands of illegitimate votes here in Nevada. What's the evidence?
You should go in and ask the question of the clerk.
No.
Which you haven't
You
done
guys
yet,
just made the claim. No, in fact, you also said there's no election observers. There's Democratic and Republican election observers inside. Mr. Grinnell. Former DNI Grinnell.
Oh my God.
See, so they just run away. They don't answer the question.
No, you can't assert something without evidence.
Right. And
like
so
you have to be able to prove your claim.
They keep calling these press conferences and talking to people and, filling people's heads with these ideas. But at the end of the day, they have nothing to back it up. And, people really are buying this stuff, and the damage that they're doing is going to last a very long time because there's going to be millions and millions of people who just don't buy the result. And, we didn't want to believe that Hillary was losing, but we didn't do this. Like, she didn't sue the pants off of everybody and claim it was cheating. This is not what adults do because, at the end of the day, what matters more is the country.
Yeah, 100%. And they say that like we haven't accepted the results for 4 years. It's like there are valid complaints about the popular vote versus the electoral college, yada, yada, yada. But nobody argues like that, nobody was saying that he wasn't like that he didn't win the electoral college.
Right. It wasn't about the process.
No.
It was about the result. And by the way, if they want to play
we were
that
complaining
game,
that he was president, but we were, it was again like an argument for the popular vote being the more legitimate way to elect a president. It wasn't, about it wasn't the argument that they're now making against us.
And also, that idea of resisting the president didn't start with Trump. Obama, the very first thing they did when Obama took office was say, we can't let this guy do anything. So, we were essentially responding to 8 years of gridlock where they wouldn't let Obama pass anything. So the idea that like, that whole thing of they just resisted Trump because they never accepted him, that never held any water because they were doing it too for so long. So that's a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. And it's really actually dangerous. Here's the registrar in Nevada, and he is essentially saying that he is afraid for his life and his family's afraid for his life because as they count the votes, they're getting threats and he's genuinely scared.
I can tell you that my wife and my mother are very concerned for me, but we have security here. We have law enforcement who are protecting us. I am concerned for the safety of my staff. We're putting measures into place to make sure that we have the security that's necessary. Again, we're going to begin.
So these people are, these are just regular folks that are counting the votes and, here they are essentially afraid for their lives. And,
it's really scary.
It is scary. I would be
Scary
scared
for the
if I were
future.
them. And then you've got armed people showing up in Arizona that actually stopped the vote last night.
Right.
So it's just so I have this straight. It's patriotic to go stop a vote count with guns, but it's not patriotic to take a knee at an NFL game or to protest police brutality peacefully at the plaza. That's not patriotic, but it is patriotic to stop a vote count when you're losing. I mean, these people are so upside down, and it's hard to even, understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's anything to just like cling to the ideology that like, I really hope that it's in its death throes, but I think it's going to be really violent on its way out, because it's like, I mean, they're not going anywhere for a while. And if we don't combat this sort of ideology as hard as possible over the next few years, then it's just going to get worse. And we're going to get a Trump 2.0 eventually, if we just try to if we don't go at this as hard as we can.
Right. And I see Tim talking about the Bernie situation and saying, I don't think it's rigged, but the progressive arm wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I'm sure there are people who wouldn't doubt it, but what happened to Bernie was a very different thing. I mean, I think Bernie,
I have complaints about that. But
so do I. I mean, he was done dirty in a lot of different ways, but it wasn't the vote count, and it wasn't the process of counting votes. It was, there was the party took Hillary's side. And, even though that bothered me, I would offer that, the party does have that prerogative if they want to do it. It just means that they're going to turn off a lot of people doing it, which I think is really what happened. So I just think that's a different situation. That's not, sore losers saying that the result was in question. It was just feeling wronged by the process, but I'm sure Tim's right that people think on the progressive side that there are rigged elections, but we just don't have any evidence of it.
I think that is another conversation. But within the context of this, with having election commissions counting these votes, and with Republicans and Democrats and like officials in there watching the count, again, it's a different argument. Like that's more of an argument of like leveraging power, whereas this is like strictly like counting votes from individuals.
Well, speaking of people who've won elections, let's go ahead and bring in our two guests today. We're going to have a round table here today. We have two people who are elected officials here in Tennessee who I really appreciate the work that they do. And we wanted to get into a little bit more about what happened here in Tennessee. So Senator Jeff Yarbro, Rep London, Lamar, how are you guys?
Hey.
Doing great, Justin. How are you?
Are you doing great, Jeff?
Yeah. I think that I think it's been a long time counting, but I think Joe Biden's going to be declared the 46th president of the United States pretty soon, and I think that will be great news for America when it happens.
Absolutely. How about you, London? How are you holding up over there?
I'm holding up. I am just staying calm until I find out the results, not getting too hyped about anything. I'm just prepared and thought about just how to move forward regardless. But I do think Biden will pull it out. So I share the same sentiments as Senator Yarbro. And so I'm looking forward to the last of the votes coming in. I was listening to you earlier saying about I am nervous about the transition of power and what that looks like for Tennesseans. Yeah. And so I think for me, that's been more of a concern for me personally than anything else, especially as I'm confident that Biden's going to pull it out. I'm trying to think about, as a state that Trump won overwhelmingly, what does the next 4 years in this state look like for us? And I think that's a totally different dynamic. And we really need to think about what that looks like. And especially for legislators like me and Senator Yarbro, as we go back to session, as we try to continue to push ideals that are going to further and better the lives of all Tennesseans, but yet it's constantly shown that not only our colleagues, but their base fully support some of the most ridiculous. I mean, I don't want to go too into it.
No, I do want you to go into that. I'm gonna come back to you on that. I do want to hear that. I want Senator Yarbro. There was one pickup in the Senate, Heidi Campbell. The results, though, were pretty overwhelmingly pro-Trump and Republican in the state. Were you surprised? Like, where were your expectations going into it, and how did this stack up?
So I don't I'm always hopeful, but I've also been through a lot of close elections, and so I don't think anybody should be, shocked by what happened in Tennessee. We had a ton more people vote this year, Democratic in Tennessee, like a lot more, like more than 250,000 more Democrats showed up than last time. And given that we're starting from a small percentage, the problem is they were excited too, right? And it's not like they ran out of people last time. They had a lot of people too. And as turnout increased, we gained a lot of vote, they gained a lot of vote. And, the final outcome, Trump didn't actually move his percentage in Tennessee, at all, not a bit. Biden did slightly better than Clinton, but really just kind of consolidated all of the third party vote that happened last time and grew. I mean, which, given how much of that was were former Republicans at that point, right? I was Evan McMullin and Gary Johnson having kind of some surges. And so you definitely can see that those people came and they just voted Democratic this year. And I think you can see that both we consolidated, we grew our numbers, and in a place that has been changing the quickest, which is, sort of the district in Nashville that was already gerrymandered. We were able to catch up with the gerrymandering after, 8 years, which is basically what
that's a positive spin.
The gerrymanders are sort of if they're not gone at this point, they're pretty strong, they're pretty good gerrymanders. Turns out you can draw a pretty good map, but that's something I think people ought to always remember, we're 38% of the state. If that's what we were in the Senate, we'd have 12 senators instead of 6.
Right.
Right. We would have 38 members of the House if Democrats actually represented the number of humans we represent.
That's true.
Not even humans, just voters.
Right. And that's obviously a big part of the equation. Speaking of the seats and the representatives, London, I wanted to get your thoughts on this is a tweet from Senator Yarbro about Tory Harris. Tory Harris will be one of 2 LGBT out gay men in the legislature. Pretty exciting, pretty cool development. London, he's over in your neck of the woods. What do you think about Tory overtaking John DeBerry?
I know that was a very contentious race, especially the influence of the Democratic Party, but I've known Tory for years. And I wrote a status about him yesterday. I remember coming back to Memphis when I graduated college and coming back to Tennessee and getting involved with the Young Democrats and everything. And I said, Lord, if I ever had the opportunity to get to public office, I just hope that I'm not the only young person there. And so everything I've built is to support people like Tory, from the Young Democrats to the Gen X PAC, to all of those resources we use to help Tory. So I'm elated to pass my title of youngest legislator to Tory Harris, who's younger than me by 4 months. And that's what it's
that's
about.
Good. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I passed that. I saw him election night and we talked about it, and I gave him my unofficial crown. And
amazing.
I'm just so elated to welcome here to the legislature, because a lot of times I feel like it shouldn't be this way, but I feel like I hold my generation on my shoulders. It is my responsibility to articulate the concerns of a more progressive, younger generation in our future. And I finally feel like I have someone to join me in that fight.
That's
great.
Great.
It's amazing. And I think that progressives, we truly got to be intentional about building a bench of leadership so that we can one day be in full control. And that's one thing I think the Republican Party has done well, is build a bench. But this is the start of us getting it right now.
Jeff, I think that's really great. Although you're not that old, Jeff. You're like my age, right? Just for the record.
Yeah, I feel like I've aged a decade.
Same.
I mean, maybe 20-year-olds.
Just clearly not including me in that. So.
I know. Well, I was feeling old there with you as that was happening.
She doesn't need a sponsor for anything this year.
I do want to ask you guys about the people on the other side of the aisle. We were talking about this before you came on. There have been a couple of people who have helped contribute already to the misinformation. Rep Tim Burchett, Jeremy Faison is, trying to defend the lawsuit, saying basically that people aren't in the room counting. What have you seen? And then there's Brian Kelsey, who's over where London represents in the Shelby County area, talking about stealing elections. What do you think the responsibility is of these legislators to not do stuff like this in this moment right now, Senator Yarbro?
I mean, there's definitely a public responsibility not to spread misinformation, not to, fan the flames of something that's just deeply anti-democratic. And so, I mean, I think anything. I'm in Zen mode right now. If you're not actually presenting real information about the election, and you're just throwing conspiracy theories, I don't even see that stuff right now.
Right.
So I'm trying to ignore it. Look, I mean, it's been a bad 4 years for, I couldn't go home for Thanksgiving if I didn't love a few Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
And we need the Republican Party to be a responsible, conservative, constructive part of our politics. And, I think it's been a bad 4 years for that. I am hoping that we can turn the corner and make that a little bit better. And I think the faster that people on the other side figure out that that's not the right way to actually try to govern a country or win elections, I think the better we will be. That I think there's a lot of we'll see.
Well, Cassie, you and I, we've talked about. Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, we talked about that there's a lot of the bad ones are gone. A few of them lost. Van Huss is gone. Holt's gone. The Hill brothers are gone. So maybe there's a new direction. Go ahead, Lennon.
Hopefully, maybe. But I definitely second everything Senator said. But I do also add that I also think they need to be a little bit more responsible in this time, just because of people's fear of their safety. And since this whole stop the counting things, you've seen Trumpers bomb rushing the count locations. People worried about weapons, counters' lives are being threatened, and you are flaming that fire. And this is beyond your own political views and propaganda. This is people's safety. And what we have seen is that the Trump camp is emboldened and is acting on these, and people are legitimately scared. And so I expect our leadership on the other side to, of course, appeal to your base, but do that in a way that's responsible. You keep people's feelings and thoughts and safety in mind. And that is what I don't appreciate about that. Because, again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, this transition of power, what that really looks like.
Yeah.
And right now, no one feels good about that. And as elected official, we have an obligation to make our constituency, whether they're Democrat or Republican, feel safe.
Yeah. What do you both think about that? Like Justin and I were just talking about, moving forward, we don't want to see a Trump 2.0 ever happen. And at least the way that I feel about it is, and it's tough here in Tennessee. I know you both do this in the legislature every time you're up there. But just kind of on a more national scale as well. Just how do we move forward and combat? I don't know if that's the right word to use, but combat that as effectively as possible. Without allowing that, or without without allowing that ideology to grow, and hopefully to push it back a little bit, as much as we possibly can, just because it's really dangerous. And as you're saying, it's making this transition really difficult. It's conspiratorial, and it's cost a lot of lives already.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is I think Democrats have to be tough and fight back, but I also think we can't become what we're opposed to. I don't want to be trafficking in disinformation.
No.
And, just existing on sort of tribal hatred where I'm trying to convince people of that their positions are something entirely different than what they are.
Right.
I mean, look, I'll still vote for our team, but I just don't know why are we doing this if that's our goal to
no,
kind of stuff. And I don't think that's why Trump's growing, right? I think we also have to be serious about the fact that look, there are lots of people who don't trust us, and a lot of that has to do with Fox News and like what Trump's done. But a lot of it's that we need to go more places, right? You know, like we need to have like way fewer conversations about like how to talk to people, you know,
And talk to people instead.
in like white working class areas, or how to, you know,
Right.
how would we, you know, get you know, people of color who haven't been registered to register and vote. Like we need to start doing that and stop talking about it.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely.
But you know,
I
the
just
serious thing that I looked at, like, and it was sad actually. I saw this, that there are a lot of people that answered the, you know, just the polling question about, you know, who cares about people like me, and like they don't think that we do. And like
Right.
that's not true.
That's very real.
At all. Like, I mean, I know,
Yeah.
like working with London, working with almost everybody, like we really do care about, you know, trying to improve life for everybody in the state. And I think we've got to actually demonstrate that to people.
Right. A big part of
think
that
that's very
seems to be
real.
that they don't hear from us enough,
Right.
and, you know, finding ways to get it out in front of them. It's not easy, but, you know, I do think that there's an effort to do it. London, you know, when you started in the legislature, you had some incendiary things to say. I won't repeat it, but unless you want to, but I'm wondering.
I agree with them, by the way.
I'm wondering, I'm not going to sit here and refute it, but I'm wondering if, you know, the past couple of years or even the past couple of days have colored the way that you view the state at all, one way or another, if it's to affirm your feelings or, you know, make you change the way that you see it.
So, I mean, we could talk about it. It's worldly news. But, you know, I started the legislature off, you know, calling Tennessee races based off the 2018 results, based on some of the things that were said, people supported. And it made it really hard for me as a legislator my first year. And throughout my first session, even though that then use an excuse to get things done, we got them done. But after everything that's happened over the course of the last 2 years with the Cassida and, you know, the things that's been said, the Donald Trumps, the protest bill, all of these different, the
voter registration, the KKK bust.
Good
keep
on the
going.
list.
I mean, it's so much. You
Fried chicken jokes. Go ahead. Sorry.
It just kind of reaffirms that we do have a racism problem in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And while I could have been more eloquent in how I said it, and I've learned now, the problem is, no, every Republican isn't a racist, but every known racist is a Republican. And so that's the problem. And what we have found out is that from this Trump administration is that racism is not a deal breaker for people when it comes to what type of leader they support. And that is also frustrating because it reaffirms this system of oppression we continue to talk about. When we talk about these systems and what you're pushing aren't working for us, and there's another way we can do it, and then you reaffirm by saying, so, you know, I'm gonna vote this way anyway. And then for these 2020 results, like more people came out for Trump, like over 500,000. Really? Like, it's obviously, and he's the most, in my opinion, one of the most least qualified presidents we've seen in modern history. One of the most divisive presidents we've seen in modern history.
Easy.
One of the most scandalous, most corrupt presidents we've ever had in modern American history. And for him to have more support in Tennessee lets me know as a legislator what type of people I'm working with.
Right.
Senator Yarbro, so it is frustrating. But what I think we have to do is focus on where we're winning. And so you are winning in places like Nashville and Memphis, in our urban enclaves, where we can change the system through 2022, focusing on the district attorney race countywide, making sure our county commissions and our city councils are more progressive, making sure that the legislators and the bodies of government who are in these urban enclaves are becoming more progressive, as we've been spending money in Gabby and Jerry's race and Andrea Barn Johnson. So I think for us, yeah, I'm frustrated, but I'm also like, okay, how I'm going to rewrite this strategy in order for us to be more effective in amending and building on the lives of Tennesseans who oftentimes feel as if they're disenfranchised. And then how, like, as Senator Yarbro said, we're going to continue to have those conversations in those areas where we see there's some progress, but is not there yet. And a lot of those are our rural areas too,
Yeah.
especially in West Tennessee. I mean, they went Trump, but there's still Democrats voting out there. And we just got to do a better job at getting our message out. We also got to do a better job of building on a new base.
Yeah.
We're not going to convince
Yep.
any of the current people to change their minds. They let us know 2 days ago that they
They
are
did sort of do that.
They're not
Along those lines, in the race that Heidi Campbell was in, there was an ad that the TNGOP put out that was sliming Gideon's army and using that to attack Heidi Campbell because she stood with them. And then this was a statement put out after the race. They said they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Congrats, Heidi Campbell. And, that just seemed like a pretty blatant example of, frankly, racism, using racism to attack somebody, trying to paint a nonviolent group as violent and extremist. Senator Yarbro, I'm going to sort of ask you similarly, but, what is your sense of that as an issue with the GOP? And, is it more that they don't really understand or put enough value on the feelings of their Black colleagues? Is that the problem? Or, do you see it more as blatant racism?
Well, so, I mean, I think London, hitting in the head in the right direction, saying like, I certainly don't think that all Republicans are racist. I think that Republican campaigns have learned to actively and aggressively use racism. And like, it's just all there to it, right? Like, I mean, there's a reason that, a U.S. Senate candidate who speaks fluent Japanese, like, couldn't pronounce Sethi, right? Like, I mean, there's some performative stuff out there that's
right
in signals that's just ridiculous. And and we should all be embarrassed by that because it's a terrible reflection on the state. I mean, I think the Gideon's Army thing, part of this is like, you have to prove that this stuff doesn't work. I mean, the Gideon's Army thing totally blew up in their face and cost Steve Dickerson votes in Nashville.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And,
that's true.
And I think, that's just, like, I know too many people personally who changed their vote based on that and gave money based on that and volunteered based on that. Like, it was a real misstep. But that's the thing, like, if people don't pay for it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think we're struggling as Democrats right now, not because we're not pleased with the outcome, right? Like, if you had told me 2 months ago or 6 months ago or 4 years ago that this is where we would be, like, I'd be looking at this map, possible to, and heading towards this outcome, I wouldn't be disappointed. It's a lot of, it's a lot of Democratic votes. It's a lot of Democratic states. I think it's still painful for us to realize that, man, even after all of this, y'all are still with him, right?
Yeah, that sucks.
It feels like nothing matters, right? And you're like, I mean, he not only like botched COVID, he got it. Right? And then, like, had the worst debate performance, got impeached, first person to lose jobs since the Great Depression. I mean, it's hard to have as many failures that are objective, like historic fact failures, as this president has. This
is just in case nobody believes you on that.
And for most people, we're just, if all we're doing is just counting like how many people fit into each demographic group and like instinct based, like, that's really no way to govern a country. And like,
is there a chance, and I'm not asking for an actual answer here, but just maybe your gut, is there a chance that this really motivated all these people, woke up a bunch of Democrats, and then when he's not on the ballot anymore, his sort of excitement fades away, but Democrats realize they got to stay awake. Maybe that's kind of how the big change is. Like, we saw what happened when we fall asleep. We don't fall asleep again. Eventually he's not going to be on the ballot anymore. Like, maybe that's how change comes.
Look, I think you're onto something. And I think that's one of the things that I'm watching a lot right now. Given my personal feelings about Donald Trump, and I assume those of the people that are largely watching this, it's hard to recognize like what's talented about him.
Yeah.
He is able to be sort of offensive and push and do all of the divisive stuff at a crazy high level while being mildly entertaining to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Like for a lot of people, they don't think he's a threat because they think he's full of it, right?
Or because they're white.
It's the whole like, don't take him seriously. Take him, that seriously, not literally, whatever nonsense that is. I mean, I think people thought he was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Like when Tom Cotton or Josh Hawley or Ben Sass tries to do that same thing, like it's not going to have the same like.
Right.
Let's hope not.
Play.
Well, owning the libs has become their like number one platform
Mm-hmm.
priority, and he's, that's his thing. So that's what they need. London, we're talking about responsibility and leadership, and we can't have you guys on here without talking about what's going on in Tennessee with COVID. This is Senator Yarbro's tweet talking about county by county response. We're a hot spot. There was just another White House recommendation to Tennessee saying to stop gatherings outside the house. He won't impose a mask mandate. Shelby County's been hit pretty hard. What do you think about the way Governor Lee has punted to the county mayors and really not done a whole lot of anything to deal with the situation that we're in?
It sounds like the Republican Party's typical skills of lacking accountability and not taking any personal responsibility. And that's what you're seeing with this COVID thing. Like, I mean, for me, it's almost as simple. Just put on a mask. Like,
right.
You just put a mask. It's going to kill you not to put on a little mask. That's it. Like, but you don't want us to protest, but you can't put on a mask.
Yeah.
You're scared of the folks outside of Legislative Plaza, but you're not scared of COVID. They'll actually kill you. You're scared of a bunch of teenagers, but not a deadly disease. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Are messed up. And I'm just keeping it real. I think my personal opinion is that more disadvantaged and oppressed communities are the ones most impacted by COVID. And until it hits their community the way it hits ours, then you'll understand.
That's true. Go ahead.
And that's just what I think that the thought process is behind many of them. But what I would like to see is all of us do the responsible thing. The governor and the legislature, period, is just to implement a mandatory mask mandate in public places that will significantly reduce the spread of COVID. That's
Senator Yarbro, is it that simple? And let's say you were governor one day. Let's just hypothetically say that. Is a statewide mask mandate something that we should do? And what are a couple other things that maybe you think he has misstepped with?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously something we should do. Like the number, I mean, you can just look at the county by county numbers or the state by state numbers, and it's obvious that it would have saved a ton of lives. I mean, the biggest mistake that we've had in the country and in the state is that somehow we've let the reopening the economy and being safe from a global pandemic be opponents.
Right.
And
it's the same thing.
That is
they're tied together.
Completely crazy. And the people that have used that have screwed up both the economy and the health.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like you can look at states that have actually done the right order and they're in better shape on both counts. And that's where we should be. But I think that we as Democrats we let that develop too. Right. And I think I think a lot of the time that we're in the legislature, we're trying to pull things out of like the MSNBC Fox News vortex, where, if we're just deciding like what we what this team thinks about this and what that team thinks about this, like you can't get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
And a mask should be it's idiotic that that's partisan in any way whatsoever.
Right. And I think you make a good point. They sort of painted Democrats as anti-business. And, we could have been a lot more vocal, I think, of being pro-business and pro-health at the same time. Like those two things.
Tying those together.
Personal
responsibility.
Tennessee has been hit as hard as, I think there are 3 states that have been hit hardest. It's Tennessee, Hawaii, and Nevada, because those are all the tourism states.
Yeah, with economically.
Health and business have always been on the same side of this argument.
Like, I can't go watch a movie right now.
Yeah.
Not because there's any law that stops it, but because Regal knows they can't get customers.
Right.
They closed literally every theater.
Right.
Right. I mean, it has nothing to do with what the rules are. It's about making people feel safe, and you can make people feel safe. You can open up a lot more of the economy.
Right. And also London, it's about setting an example. I mean, Governor Lee's spending millions of dollars to encourage people to wear masks. Meanwhile, we see pictures of him all over the place not wearing masks. Something so basic that he probably thinks isn't that big a deal. But to me, that is a very big deal. And because word gets around. Mask mandate's free, and people see it, and definitely people, especially in rural Tennessee, will be like, well, governor's not wearing a mask. Why am I going to wear a mask? Like, that's how that works. And
Same with Trump.
And he talks about personal responsibility, but where is his, right, London?
Look, all I got to say is I think that as a governor, you have an obligation to take the health and safety of all Tennesseans in consideration. And you got to be able to determine through discretion, when is it an appropriate time to go ahead and implement policies that, everybody won't like it, but it's for the greater good. Yeah. And that is what I'm hoping we can see from our administration that we haven't seen.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you guys both for joining us. If you guys have any parting words here, I keep glancing over to see if we have a new president yet. I don't think we do.
It's going to be a minute.
But we're on the verge of it. I think it will be today. And that's a pretty exciting thing. So, as some parting words, Senator Yarbro, any thoughts for us as we, maybe get some relief from this 4-year nightmare?
Yeah. So, turn on something else.
Impossible.
Like you literally don't have to be on Twitter. I mean, I'm not following it.
Did my wife put you into this?
Have you seen the Holler?
Did my wife tell you to do this?
Watch Mandalorian, go for a walk, spend some time with your family. Like, it will and you can check in every couple of hours and things will be all right. But I think more importantly, I think there are a lot of people who wanted this to be a repudiation. They wanted this to be like the election that saved democracy, so that we can, if you think you can go back to like a calm world where we're spectators of democracy, like that's never the way it works. Like, it got broken because we thought that. This is democracy takes action from people all the time. And that's why, I love these people that are counting votes in Maricopa County, versus the people who've been called off the sidelines, from their cable news, warriors. Like, those are the people who make democracy work every day, every year. And we need more of them. We need to become, better at building that and pulling people in the system to make that real all the time.
And just before we get a final thought from London, I just want to say, it's hard to beat an incumbent president. He's going to beat him by 4 to 8 million votes in the popular vote. And he actually might beat him pretty handily electorally too, when all is said and done. So even though this happened slower than we would have liked because of absentee ballots and the pandemic that we're in and the way this unfolded, it's not off the table yet that this is actually a pretty big repudiation. So I just want to get that out there. London, what's your final word from you?
I would just say I agree with Senator that just take care of yourself. I know I am. Take care of your mental peace. We don't know what things will look like, even though I'm confident Biden will come out, but we're not unsure about the transition of power. So love on the people you can. Take care of yourself. Mask up. And just know, enjoy the holiday season, but the work is not done, at least for us and Senator Yarbro. In 2022, if we're concerned about the governor and all of red Tennessee, that's the year that we can make the most impact. So enjoy your break.
And do either of you have any announcements that you want to make right here on the Holler? I'm just going to leave you 3 seconds right here, just in case. No. Okay. All right. Thank you both for coming on here. And
thanks, Justin. Thanks,
maybe soon.
All right. Well, take care. All right. Senator Yarbro, London, Lamar.
Yeah.
Good people fighting the good fight.
Yeah, it was good to hear from both of them on their perspectives on all this. And I really also just resonate with what London was saying about the uncertainty of the next few months. I think we just got to take it one step at a time. And And with regard to the results here in Tennessee, I mean, I know that I'm disappointed about a lot of these state house races and some of the, other state Senate races, but I was talking to Afton actually yesterday about how we didn't lose anything. We gained, Heidi Campbell, and we got Tory, which is much better than DeBerry, and we didn't lose anything. We retained Gloria's seat, and
it's a really good point.
A lot of others.
I really think Trump he's got a loyal flock, obviously, and a lot of that is why Republicans are showing up. But I would be willing to bet that when these waves they're both going to subside a little bit, we're going to have fewer voters in the midterms next year.
Always, unfortunately,
always. But
you hope not.
I feel like because of the nature of how things have gone, and because of the nature of what's inspiring and motivating people, I feel like their wave may subside a little bit more than ours. And, that's sort of the hope, because I don't think we're going to get the numbers aren't going to go up. It's the question now of how far down are they going to go next time around? And, is the wave in the midterm, right? So right. I just hope people are awake now for a good long period of time. Understand what it takes. And Angel says, let's talk about Cori Bush and AOC.
Yes, we've expanded. I gotta say, I gotta jump on that as well. Angel, I'm glad you brought that up, because just nationally, it is such a bummer that we lost some of the House seats that were in dicey districts. But progressives won. Yeah, well, what I'm saying is because we gained a lot in 2018, but then we lost a few of them in some of the more moderate districts. However, we are expanding the squad, with Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, obviously the original squad, they all won their re-elections. And so I think it's really showing that, running on platforms like that is a winning message. And I think that we just have to figure out ways of making that a winning message down here. And what they were talking about expanding the electorate, I think, is a big part of that, which takes a long time. Progress takes time.
You're right about that. One of the things that I'm hearing from more moderate Democrats is that it's possible that Biden didn't win by as much as he could have because he was too progressive. So I would be on the lookout for that talking point, because that seems to be what's coming from more moderate Democrats. It's he got too progressive. Biden. And I know.
Who's saying this?
To me, that's some outrageous pretzel logic.
Who is saying this?
I've seen it in multiple places.
You have to send it. I believe you. I just want to see it. That's ridiculous.
I'll show it to you on Twitter, and also in my group threads with my friends.
Oh, man.
They've sent me stuff, and it's they're looking for ways now to, we got our president. Now we need to make sure no progressive agenda gets passed. And so that's
why they're happy about the Senate. Exactly. About what might happen with
there are definitely Democrats that are happy that there's potentially a split Congress. And, I just think, first of all, it's not backed up by data. Progressives and progressive policies passed in this election. Even in Florida, exactly, where the $15 minimum wage
and
passed.
Montana with weed,
Oregon passed, legalized drugs in general. New Jersey got weed, Mississippi got weed. That's not the lesson to take from this. The lesson to take from this is to lean more into progressivism.
Right. And Medicare for all exit polls on Fox,
70%. And, when people ask me, do I think Bernie would have won this election? Yes, I do. I still do. And I know that there are people that will say, we needed Biden to get that blue wall in the Midwest, but
we lost seats. They were complaining about,
and they said that he was good for down ballot. Exactly. So
didn't happen.
The amazing thing and the depressing thing about this process
I'm not happy about
never
that.
Actually know what happened and why, and you're always sort of flying blind and guessing. But it's also got to be the exciting part.
Progressivism is on the rise, though.
It is, and it's mainstream in a lot of ways. So I hope people will continue to lean into it. And the fight is nowhere near over. It's just beginning. So I think we all know that. Anybody that's still watching us right now probably already knows that.
If you are watching and if you're not plugged in, definitely get get organized.
We might be looking at a Senate win in January. Angel's right about that. And you were saying that people are already volunteering. They're planning on volunteering in the runoff down in Georgia. So
we'll post about volunteer options if you're able to go or to help online. There are ways to help online too.
Absolutely. If you're interested in going down to Georgia to put some legwork in, let us know.
The devil goes down to Georgia.
We'll send you to the right places. And then Joel Alex is asking, what's our state strategy? How do we get momentum? If we had the answers for that, we'd be rich here, Joel. But
we need to have a whole conversation about that.
Right. As Maddow says, watch this space, and we'll try to help push that forward best we can. Thank you guys for watching this. We'll be back Tuesday and Thursday, hopefully with a new president here at the Holler Hour. Thanks for joining us as always.
Thanks.